So hi, thanks Paul for coming to this and for staying up very late to be with us in Lockhart.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I usually go to bed about an hour earlier than this.
So can you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself for newcomers to the SCA? Like what got you into fighting? How long have you been fighting?
Well, my first tournament, I didn't get to fight in. It was October of 1970. And I started fighting about a month later. I entered my first crown tournament in March of 71. I finaled and got knighted in June of 71. And I won the crown in October 71. And then I swapped back and forth between Duke James Greyhelm and myself 2 more times. And then we just kept going on. You got to let somebody else win at some point. My background before this was in judo. So I was a black belt for a number of years before I took this up. And it turns out that judo, the techniques form a wonderful basis for what we do, which sort of makes sense because judo is actually developed for fighting in battles. People in our game keep saying, oh, we'd like to get grappling in. Well, they did that then, but that was sort of a rougher game. They're trying to kill each other for real. Anyway, so basically basing everything on the judo background, it was sort of a matter of adapting the techniques I already knew to using with a sword and shield.
Okay. So what's the basics of the grappling and the body mechanics? They're a lot of that's based in judo.
Yeah, for instance, I wish I had a partner here that I could show it to you, but so if I have my opponent is here, and I'm holding on to him like this, and I want to throw him forward, I'll come under his arm like this and then twist to that position. And
okay.
Now remember this position. So if I have thrown a snap and I want to hit a blow on the other side, notice something similar?
Yeah,
it's the same exact position.
Yes.
I'm moving through that. And then there's a whole lot of stuff in that, like there's another throw that you come here and you pull them over your leg like this, and your weight drops down to that side. And that's how I use a weight shift for the snap to power the snap.
Okay. The first time I'm curious about, how was your system taken within the SCA fighting community at first?
At first, it took, because there wasn't much of an SCA when I got in. Aidenville was announced as the fourth kingdom on the 12th night that I joined, but it spread pretty quickly. It's still mainly on the West Coast, but I did a lot of teaching trips to various places over the years, and a lot of them were back east and pretty much everywhere.
And here.
And the snap that everybody refers to as the snap, its real name is the Bellatrix snap. So I invented that. Most of the other stuff, not so much back east, but a lot more than in the West Coast.
How from what you've
a lot of people. Go ahead.
What you've seen in Lockhart,
a lot of people
that
back east. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think we've got a bit of a delay. Now you
Go
go
ahead.
on.
Unfortunately, some people back east got the wrong idea from looking at the wrong picture. Or actually, they looked at the wrong picture, didn't read the writing under it, and what they took to be my snap was not my snap. It was something else, and I've been fighting that ever since. And it's, it's I made a choice way back when. I could either really concentrate on my students locally and really develop a strong group like that, which I sort of did through most of the next 30, 40 years. The West basically fought my system. There are a number of, well, almost everybody actually. I lost my place.
Sorry, given that Lockhart is from the West, really, as a kingdom, would you say we are similar from what you've seen and your experience?
I can't really tell anymore. I just don't see the fighting as much. There are so many things that people come up with over the years, and they teach it to somebody, they don't look at it critically, and it's just horrible biomechanically or tactically or something like this. But you can get good at anything, and you can be effective with almost any technique. But a lot of it's, you're just developing a feeling of how to fight. It's a feeling to fight, and pretty much it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference because you're not really using anything effectively, but it's your own athleticism and perception that are basically fueling everything. But then it gets taught to your students, and your students may not be quite as fast or as strong or as perceptive as you are, and then they wonder why they can't do it.
I've heard you say that anyone can learn your system, whether they be gender, build, height, strength. Can you go into why you would say that?
Well, biomechanically, the male and female bodies are identical as far as fighting goes. The basic structure and stuff like this. You hear all the time, oh, well, women have a lower center of gravity. Well, I can find you any number of men who have a lower center of gravity than most females. And I can find a lot of females who are stronger upper body than a lot of males are. So it's really a difference in people. The difference between one person and another is much greater than the average male and the average female. So you treat people as individuals. And my system is designed to supply you with what you don't have. If you don't have speed, I'll give you techniques to give you speed. If you need foot speed, I can't give you that, but I can give you ways of moving around that are more compatible with actual fighting, and you get to the same place faster, but you take a shorter path, or you start moving a little sooner than your opponent does.
What about differences like strength?
Well, like I said, I can find a number of men who are women who are stronger than a lot of men. So it's really what your individual is. All my techniques are very, very core powered. I don't really use the arm a whole lot except to guide the sword around, hold on to it when I swing it. So when I swing at somebody, I don't use the arm to power the blow. I use the body to power the blow. Sure, the arm puts some in, but my thought was when I was coming up with this is, what are the strongest muscles in the body? They're the core muscles, your abdomen, your lower back, your upper legs. What are the smallest ones that are involved? Well, the fingers. So let's eliminate the fingers. Okay, what's the next smallest one? The wrist. Well, let's get rid of the wrist. the elbow. Well, we can't get rid of it completely, but we won't use it to supply power. How's that? And then the next one's the shoulder, same thing. I can't eliminate the shoulder, but I de-emphasize it for applying power. So everything goes from the core. For instance, if I was,
Mm.
see, just throw a snap, I can just be like here, and I will throw a snap, and the sword will go out. Now, if I don't move my upper body and I unwind, I didn't move my upper body. It's in the same place I started. I just turned it. But the power was supplied by my core muscles taking the weight that I dropped to my front knee and doing some twists to supply power. I only hold my hand with the last couple fingers, maybe three, because that activates the sort of chains of muscles and bone and connective tissue that comes down and grabs the core. So it pulls it down into that.
So are there any questions until we move on to particular weapons? Maren, do you have any?
Mostly just about if you don't have like somebody locally that can teach you really solid, good basic technique, what's a good way to go about getting that?
Well, if you go, excuse me, if you go to on my Facebook, the Bellatrix Fighting School on Facebook, there will be some place where it says that it references where 4 presentations I did are on YouTube, and you can go look at those because I cover most of the basics and a little extra in those, and then you can write me and ask me to help you.
Thanks, I'll certainly be looking that up.
Yes. I can tell you he's a very good teacher, very patient with me. Right.
Well, teaching on Zoom isn't the best thing, so I try to make it be as patient as I can.
I will say that it does help to have somebody else there with you to learn, because they will learn and they need to do certain things to get it to work. I progressed a lot better when I had someone else, even if it's just that person to be an extra body.
We have quite a few local fighters, but obviously like with the various lockdowns, etc., it can be a bit limiting trying to find somebody to practice with and to pick up on things that you're not quite getting.
Well, unfortunately, my techniques have evolved to the point where they're not really a whole lot like anything anybody else does. Well, the people that fight my style do, and you can see parts of it, but you get told so many different things that the people come up with. This sounds good, so we'll do it this way, and then it's not good that way. Like I am told that in on tier, I'm in on tier now. But in on tier, they fight with their swords over here like this. I don't consider that very useful because your hand's in front of your body, and that's a very, very poor biomechanical position. And the rumor is that this started because back a long time ago, they could not block my snap. So they had to have a static defense. You don't really have to do that because the tactics have improved too. There's this one little technique. It's really pretty simple to do. I call it the slide step. Now, so if I was swinging the snap from back here, which gives me a better basically I can rotate my body and gather power and let the weight drop. Whereas if it's out here, especially if you've gone with the other leg, you're just doing it with your arm. So what I do, you can't really step while you're adding power to the blade. So like I couldn't step like this because the blade only moves as fast as my foot does. But I can supply the power, all the power is supplied there now. And then I just let my front foot slide forward. And now I'm a foot and a half closer. So if you can't handle my first attack technique, you just stay out of range until you want to come in. So that's one of the things.
That
What else,
actually probably brings us into a good segue with the sword and shield, which is the most used. And while I have only trained a little in that, is what I also train against. So what you see the goal of with your technique with sword and shield?
Well, there's a couple things. I noticed from watching the practices I see that you send me and that Joe Clayton sends, or Joe Green sends me, that a lot of your fighters actually have their arms back like I use. Is that true?
Yes, yeah, they'll go often with a.
I see that quite regularly, yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. So that's a good way to start. And then another thing that I have a problem with is a lot of people will throw a blow, come back here, and then throw another one, or come across here and come back like that, and then they're stuck because they're not cocked anymore. That's something you got to get over too. Don't stop your hand between. So with a couple of the techniques I have, I can throw a snap and come around here and come back here and come back here and come back here. And I can keep throwing and throwing and throwing and throwing and throwing while I move. I can move in any direction while I do this. And that's just because I'm using my core and I'm just letting the motion of the sword move me places. I can either move with the sword or I can move with the sword as a counterbalance. So like if I'm doing this one here and I want to move this way and I want to move over here, right about here, I just step over there.
Mm.
If I do the same thing like this and I want to step that way, I just wait till a little later in the swing and I'm over there. And the nice thing about that is your opponent is paying attention to your sword. It's not paying attention to your feet after the sword starts swinging. So you can move your feet during the sword swing and your opponent won't notice it, which gives you a little more of an advantage. Now the style that uses a lot of sword blocking, you see it. You see a lot of people, they're holding their shield in pretty close to their body and they're blocking up here with the sword and then they move the shield down sometimes, or they lose their leg. That's a defensive style. You're using your only offensive weapon to block with all the time. So that means that cuts down, every block you do is a blow you can't throw, or two. So what I use is I use a punch block. So I'll just bring the front edge of my shield out to block like that. And one of the advantages of that is that the further out you block from your body, the more your shield covers. For instance, you can see on my shield right next to my body, and you can see how much of it blocks. Now, if I move it out in front of me like this, it blocks a lot more, doesn't it? And that's what moving out the block with the front edge does.
With the shield, I know you're using a strap, but there are a lot of people who use a held in the middle. Is there any preference with your style or not?
Yes, there is. Strap shields are my preference because when you get into the upper the upper echelons of the technique, I use offensive shield work too.
Ah,
So it's a little tough to demonstrate without a partner. But let's try it.
I've been curious myself about how to use defense offensively.
Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna get another chair. Hold on a second. Actually, let me put the other shield up there. You see that okay?
yep.
I'm gonna get down here so you can sort of see what I'm doing. So I can take my sword and I'm gonna swing it towards where I want my opponent's shield to be when I throw the next blow. So the second blow is gonna be over here. So all of my shield, my opponent's defense is over there. So I will swing over here like this, the defense moves over there, and then I open my shield like a block, but then I press their shield. And that opens up this side. So you just reach it out and push it with your front edge. You can hold it or you can just pop it or whatever you need to do. Then the other thing is a shield hook. So my second blow is going to be over there now. So I'll swing over here and then I'll reach out and hook my opponent's shield to get it out of the way. Those are the main things, but they're just incredibly effective. See, after a while, I just stopped fighting for sword and shield because it was too easy, and started using all the other weapons. So, like I won, I think my 4th crown I won with 2 sword. My 5th crown I won with, or 6th, I don't remember. I won with long great sword. No, with the glaive. I was trying for my 9th crown, and because I just invented my greatsword style, and I fought 3 crowns, and I got quarters, semis, and all the losses were to left-handers because they could cheat, because I'm swinging over here with the thing, and so they cheat their shields way over there. I couldn't do anything about it. And then I realized one of my stances is like this, and all I had to do is move the tip on that side, and then I could just come right down into their shoulder.
Yeah.
But
I was going to
right at
ask
that
you.
point, I became engaged to my wife, and she didn't want to be queen.
I was going to ask you how you fight left-handers because we have a few left-handed dukes in Lockhart.
I fight the same way left-handed as I fight right-handed. The only difference is you have some lines of attack that are different from against another right-hander, and some of the tactics are a little bit different. Like for instance, you'll see a lot of people they're fighting a left-hander or an whatever it is, opposite-hander, and they'll swing like this, and the other guy swings like that. So you got 2 swords coming in, and it's flipping a coin to see who gets the shot in. I never do that. Never. But it's just something you learn, one of the real neat combinations to fight against a left-hander. As far as my major techniques goes, this one here where I throw a snap and then I come over here, is about the fastest, and it is really, really fast. Think of the fastest snap that people use that you've seen. Well, both blows are that fast or faster. It's not so much the blade is moving that much faster. It does move really fast, but this is so the timing on this and the technique, it makes it so easy to do that it gets there faster, efficient.
Oh dear.
So anyway, do it right, you get both of those blows before your opponent gets one. So if I do that slide step in, and at the same time I move over here a step, then I come in this one, then my left-handed opponent is going like this real hard. And from here, he's got his sword over there, he's got a shield over there. I stick my shield right up here, block everything, step in here and throw a wrap.
Yeah, I think I've seen that quite a few times.
Just one or the other, do you fit? Let me talk just about one thing here. Just, I was talking about the efficiency of the blows. See, most people, they can maybe get one thing out there by whipping their body over here like this. Yeah, that can get about as fast as I can do it, but look at the position they're in. They're now sideways. They're completely committed over here. And if they want to go over there, they have to literally step back out and then go back in. And mine, what I do is I power that backward swing by headbutting something behind me, and it just pulls my sword around. I do the same coming back. So I'm always in position to swing the next blow. And so that's why I say I just start moving a little sooner than they do, because the technique is so efficient. It gets me there in a position that I can go right into the next blow. I don't have to reposition my body. I can apply power just exactly the way I want it, and so on. So what were you going to ask me?
It's all right. As a matter. Mirren, would you like to ask anything?
No, not at this stage. I'm happily just listening,
Okay.
learning
Well,
from greater wisdom.
Well, don't feel, any little thing that you say, well, how does that work? Please do, because it makes it easier for me to continue things. Otherwise, I have to remember everything.
I'm just wondering if there's anything else we should talk about with sword and shield, things like footwork.
I was just about to say, if there's anything else on footwork would be a great advantage. I'm not the tallest of people, so anything that can get me closer, faster, in and out would be awesome.
Okay, well, what you want to do is don't consider footwork as a thing by itself. You want to tie it in with everything else too. For instance, if you take a step in towards your opponent, then your opponent's going to react. And it's going to react to your body because he sees where your body's going, and you have provided no real threat. So your opponent's free to pay attention to what you're doing. So if you use that slide step I just showed you, and I'll show it again more carefully. The first thing that moves is your sword. So your opponent immediately looks at your sword because that's the threat. And then once the sword's moving into it, you just let it slide your front foot forward, and you can move in. One of my students is a female knight. She's about 5 foot tall, and she can step forward 22 inches with that slide step. And that's a pretty nice thing to be able to do. So anyway, if you start with the sword, you move in with the slide step. You now have done a couple things. One, they watch the sword, so they're reacting to your sword. Two, you're out of range when you start this. And so the first thought your opponent has is they're out of range. and then it's coming closer than it should come with you being out of range. And they said, well, that's coming too close, and then it hits, and by that, and another little trick we do, instead of coming into range of my opponents to hit them on the first swing, I come into range of their shields. Because if I can get that close, which is about a foot out of range, your opponent will react to that. And that's all you want. You want them to react to something that wouldn't hit them. And so while they're reacting to that, and you have this technique that allows you to go immediately into your next blow, I figure if I come in with a slide step and hit here, my opponent will still be blocking that when my sword's about here in the next blow. So you can see it has its advantages. So let me show you my just regular move around thing. It's called the power waddle, because that's sort of what it looks like you're doing. One of my squires is into death metal, wanted to call it the death waddle, but I wouldn't let him. So it's basically, when you're moving around, you always keep your ankles outside of your knees and your knees outside of your hips. So I never go like this and balance on one foot, because I can't move off that foot. If I'm right over the foot, then it pushes me up. So I'll let the sword swing and I'll move. It's just like if you've ever done any rollerblading or ice skating, it's just like that. You just come like this, and you can go backwards, and you can turn around in circles, but it's always the ankles are outside of the knees are outside of the hips. You can bend your upper body, but you have to keep your lower body in conformation. So you see my hips are at the top of sort of a blunt triangle. I can lean all the way over here, but I've still got all that motion. I can walk around like this. Whereas you see people that go like this, and then their hips get over or outside, and they can't come back from that. It costs them a lot of time to do that. So did you get the idea of what I was talking about with that power waddle, Miriam?
Yeah, I do. It's a good analogy. I've done roller derby before, so yeah, the sort of motion is familiar.
Yeah, that's a real good way to go. And you can tie your sword swings in that. So you just get your sword, and you don't really swing the sword. You just, as if you're to hit somebody, you just swing side to side. You're like this, you're like this, you're like this, you're like this, and you can just walk around. And then eventually, when you start working on the lapel, can you see the lapel here?
Yes.
Okay, I can't, there's just a little teeny picture of me up there, so I can't really see too well. I can move back a little bit, can't I? So I can be out of range here, and I'll come in and I'll hit and hit and hit and hit and hit. You see, it was always balanced, always upright. And all the blows come with power, and they just flow one into the other, to the other, to the other, to the other.
Yeah, I can say from experience, don't lean forward.
Yeah, leaning forward is a really, really bad thing. That's one thing. Let me go back to the power generation again. To really get any real power by your body turning, you have to have the muscles in the front that hold you upright and the muscles in the back that hold you upright balanced. If you lean forward, they're not balanced anymore. These are stretched, these are compacted. And you just can't, just try it sometime. Just get a sword here, and swing it like this, when you're nice and upright, and then lean over and try to do it. It just doesn't work real well. And it feels real bad. So let me show you that slide step. This is in one of those videos that told you to go look at. I can give the, do you have the
Oh, I
link
put
to
the
that?
link
Did I
to
ever
the
give it to you?
Facebook in the chat.
Okay, well, point her to it.
Yeah, it's in the chat, the link to the Facebook page.
Okay, so watch how this works. I'm gonna apply power by letting my weight come down to my knee here, like this, with my shoulders staying upright like that. And then I start twisting. But when I twist, I still stay upright. So as I throw my first blow, my weight starts to go down, the sword gets out to about here. Just before my weight goes onto that foot, I pick it up and let it slide. And you just take the other foot, it's like a fencer. Or I can come in here like this, here, and then step in with the other foot. So you have different ranges you can go to. And when you're learning these things, like the slide step, it helps a whole lot to grab your sword with both hands. Then you just swing it, and it swings your whole body. And it's a lot easier to get that motion. That's a practice technique, not a fighting technique.
Okay, if there's nothing else, maybe we can go into greatsword and a bit of pole, if that's okay.
Okay. Getting a little warm.
It is the direct opposite here. It is very cold.
Well, it's actually only probably about 55, 60 degrees outside. Probably more closer to 55.
I think it's around 40 here.
Yeah, this is sort of, we're right at the end of our spring. Okay, greatsword. Okay, the footwork is pretty much the same with the greatsword as I do with the sword and shield. I mean, it's the only best way I can think of moving around, so that's what I do. So I have two stances with the greatsword. If I'm right-handed, I'll have my left foot forward in this guard. I'll switch in the other one. Is right about here, and I'll move it back to here, and then move it in like this. And then take this hand and go right here like that. That's my stance. Now I keep the elbow pointed directly at my opponent with the arm and both the forearm and the upper arm at an angle to going straight forward, because it makes it too easy for somebody to chop down and get you. And this is more of an offensive stance. I can use the other one for offensive, but this is the real offensive stance. So to swing the blow, I pull this arm forward as my weight shifts. And then this one goes down, and then this arm is straight, and then this one goes straight out, but this one stays straight, and I just turn like that. Got lights. So it's just down like that and then turn. And it is pretty quick. That's really a hard thing for people to learn, because almost everybody teaches greatsword that you swing by going like this. And I just don't like that one little bit. It's much weaker and it's much slower than what I'm doing. And then the common way of doing it, if you're going from side to side, you go here and then you come around like this. I will do that sometimes, but it'll have to be a real particular situation. I use my back edge a lot. So I'll come and hit this person, then I'll flip my sword over to the other side, and while I flip, my body is starting to go back. This is now straight, then I pop. So bang, bang, bang. Oops. And then my other stance is go from this stance, I take my front foot and I pull it back like this. And that's this is more of a, if somebody has got a sword and shield and is stalking me. And I pull this back as far as I can, because what I do when I'm fighting against a great weapon is I go and try to control their blade. So if somebody wants to get in range of hitting my blade, they're in my thrust range by about 2 feet. And I use that one a lot. Maybe if somebody's charging me, I'll either use this one to hit them and knock their shield into their face, or I'll use this one with a point and knock the shield into their face. And then I do nasty things to them.
Yeah, there are lots of nasty things.
But I don't hold my sword out like this, because if it's held straight out like this, one, it's easier for my opponent to attack, and two, if I want to do anything, I have to do this, and that's a tell, because it's not a threat. It's a preliminary motion to the attack, and that says, I'm going to swing at you now. You're ready. You don't want to do that.
Are there any in the greatsword style? Are there any reference to manuals or fighting schools, say Japanese, German, Italian, or is it just coincidental if there are similarities?
It's the only thing that is remotely like Japanese is that stance. And that's just
Hasanakame.
because I'd seen it. And I said, well, let's see if this one works, and it did. So that's it. This one is not a Japanese stance. And if I do anything that's in a fight book, it's purely unintentional. I've never read them.
Okay. It's just that there are
Maybe a little.
actual...
Well, it may be a little hubris, but I'm a primary source. So unless I want to compare my style with somebody else's, which I don't particularly, I'll use mine.
Fair enough. I was just wondering because when you've been teaching me, I've noticed there are similarities, but I also thought that might be because they discovered it was more effective. You've discovered it's effective, and that's why you use it.
Yeah, form follows function. You want to do something. There are only so many ways you can do it, and they'll probably have a lot in common. So if I want to do one particular thing and somebody in one of the fight books wants to, they're probably similar with some little differences. And I have nothing against the fight books. It's just if I want to spend time studying a style, I'm going to study mine, because I'm still adding things to it even now after 50 years.
Miran, do you have any questions?
Probably just more about defending against sort of great swords and the longer weapons.
Okay, let me show you something. Okay, I've shown you the slide step, and that works nice against great weapons too. So imagine that there's a sword sticking out from this guy. It sticks out to about here. He's holding it in front of him. So what I'm going to do I'm going to stay way out here where I'm out of his range. And then I'm going to swing for his sword. I'm not going to swing like I want to knock it out. I just want to touch it. Now I'll use that slide step, doing the same thing. It's like this. Now let's say I managed to touch it. Then I just slide up to his hands, and then I scrape his sword off of my shield, and I have a free weapon, and they do not. And one of the other little tricks as I'm doing that, let's say my opponent is facing me from your position. As I swing this out to his towards his sword, instead of taking a slide step, I can let this pull my other leg, and I can let it pull me sideways, which takes me out of the thrust line. That's getting advanced a little bit. So anyway, with the great weapons, you want to get where you can slide step in and touch his blade, and then you just try to, you don't try to push hard, you just try to keep it just touching. When they move, you move. You want to get it as close to your hand by getting it close and sliding up, and then you just scrape their sword off with your shield, and then you just swing at them. They don't have a defense.
Yeah, a lot of the defense in great weapon is not being there.
Well, a lot of things, if you do your attacks, like I told you, that slide step, and the other one, since you got a shield there, you can sort of stay behind your shield. When you swing here, you can let it pull your other leg, and like I said, you're out of the thrust line. You can also do a slide step and move this way, and you're out of the thrust line. And if you can't get in to get your shield controlling his blade, you sort of keep swinging. You try to swing it down the blade. You don't try to swing across it. You try to swing down it. So if their weapon is here, then you'll swing here. If you've already missed the first try, you'll swing here. If they move it here, then you swing it here. Because if you're swinging it like that, almost right at the point, they don't quite know whether you're going to go over or under, or on this side or that side. So it slows down their response a little bit, which may allow you to get the shot in.
Actually, this might be a good bot to bring up the sticky hands bit, the push and pull over committing thing.
That's the really important thing. It's useful in almost everything. If your sword or your shield is touching your opponent's weapon or them, you can make them react by doing a little quick push. It's like this hand wants to make this hand go forward, so I'm going to do a little push and then pull myself back out real quick. And if I do a push just right, this is what will happen. So what I do if I'm doing it with a sword, I'll put the sword right in next to it, and I'll give it that little push and pull back. And as they go back, excuse me. So my sword's right across their sword. I give that little push, and they push back. I just let the sword go back here, and then I swing it back in.
Mm.
I don't want to get into some of the really intricate stuff. I fight almost exclusively inside with these things.
Yeah, I just I thought mentioning that was good because it is one of the big things that and particularly in terms of if your opponent is bigger and stronger than you, you don't have to do a strength test. You're pretending to do a strength test.
That's exactly right. And it works really, really well. There's another thing that this is just a little throw out thing. It's a technique that doesn't really fit anywhere. If you get some big guy that's charging you, what you do is you wait until they're far enough out of range that you can swing like this, but this will be close, and then you swing it right above their knees. and you let it pull yourself out of their way. Because if you do that and they're charging in and they watch that sword and it causes their eyes to go down, right then they stop. That's a neat little trick.
Are there any differences with a pole, would you say?
No, not a lot. You can't swing that way because I don't hold the pole up like this. I just don't.
Yeah.
So the pole like this, I hold my hand back as far as I possibly can. And then I pull it back as far as I can. Sometimes I'll let it come even a little further. Because what I want it to do is I want that person who wants to hit my sword, my weapon, to come way into my thrust range to do it. Because with this thing, I can go out here about 10 feet. Because I have a big glaive. And pretty much it's an interesting thing you can do with a sword. That works really, really well with a glaive. So if you've got your sword out here, you just hit them, and you put it back into a little teardrop shape, and you rotate that way as you're going back, and this way while you're going forward. You keep doing this a whole long time. And if you happen to be on the other side, you do the same thing. Sorry. Notice this, my body is turning the blade. The blade just goes in that little teardrop shape. We got this point that goes up forever. And then I've got those little, that's exactly what I do to hit somebody. I just come out here like this and pop it in with my hips. See my hips go? And I come over here, do it back the other way. Or I'll poke at them and miss on purpose and come around and hit. That's getting a little more fancy. But fighting against them works exactly the same way as the greatsword.
What do you fighting against someone with a pole?
I'm sorry?
Fighting against somebody with a pole.
How do you get them?
Yeah, how do you get somebody with a pole? The only thing, my main thing I try and do is get close.
Well, you're using a greatsword though, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. So I like to get in close because that takes their range advantage away. And inside, the greatsword is a lot more maneuverable and quicker than the glaive is.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be right up against them unless you know the techniques that I used in there, which are a little beyond you right now.
Yeah.
You want to be out where you can easily do the swings like this, you know. And you can use those as blocks. I think I showed you that the other day, didn't I?
Yeah, yeah. I think I did some of those last week against a pole person, got in their face and just stabbed them.
Yeah, so you don't want to be in their face though. You want to be. Where's my person? See, if you're going to do that, you want to be right about here. You know, maybe here, maybe here. But they can't really do a whole lot to you because their blade's too long. And you just
chopping.
Yeah, chopping.
Yeah, a sword
I
and
do
shield.
a lot of other things too. But
yeah, a sword and shield person against a pole.
Well, I think we covered that. What you want to do is you want to do a slide step in and swing at their blade, not to knock it out of the way, but just to get a hold of it. So once I swing out, so once I've swung out and I've touched their blade, I don't try to knock it out of the way. If they push back, I'll move with it. If they go the other way, I'll move with it. If they go too far, I'll come around and hit them.
Okay.
So it's sticky hands.
Ah, I see. Yes.
If you get in really close, there are other things that I do, but you're not really there yet.
Maroon, anything you'd like to ask?
Not at this stage, thanks.
Well, if there's anything else we should add, we are going good for time.
I'm sorry?
We are going good for time.
Okay.
I'll probably
well,
have to leave in the next few minutes myself.
Okay. I do want to go into two swords as well, Florentine, as it's called here. I have heard it's the most difficult one.
Oh no, great sword, but far a lot harder. Two swords is actually the next easiest. Pretty much there's all the returns and stuff like that, and the tricky things I do with sword and shield, I do with two swords. The things that I do that are different, so my two sword style, my stance is flatter. You know, if I'm fighting sword and shield, it'll be a lot more like this. So in sword and shield, if I draw a line to my opponent, the toe of my left foot touches that line and the heel of my right foot touches that line. If I'm fighting two sword, this one moves out and up like this. So if I draw a line crossways, the heel of this one touches it and the toe of this one touches it. That's just a guide. You can do anything you like. Now, as far as the swords go, I hold them just like this. My elbows in tight. I move my hands out until they want to stop. And then I lift it up just slightly. So what I do is if I'm gonna block, it's just like a swing, but the blade doesn't come forward. So if I want to block, I'll block so it hits here. And so on the other way. And the down block is sort of difficult, but you try to swing towards here, rotating your body and leaning towards the sword, keeping inside that triangle of your legs. And you can get all the way down to your knee that way. I don't let this sword go down. I'll just come here like this and I'll go here. And then, so I have a sword cocked after I block the other one. What's really interesting is the actual way to swing from that position, because it's a horrible position if you don't do it right. You just simply can't get any power. Come on. So here's what I do. So I'm fighting this person here. So when I swing with this sword here, I'm going to swing at somebody standing next to them. I don't swing my sword, but I swing my body towards, see my body go towards that? And the sword just comes out that way. The same thing with the other sword.
That explain why I've heard it compared to boxing?
No, not a bit.
Oh, okay. I'm wrong then.
It's like I have a whip in both hands. Now, the trouble with boxing is to get any speed off the sword requires you to flex your wrist to get the power. I mean, you've got the power coming from your body, but if I move the sword like this and don't use the wrist, I'm not going to do anything.
Ah, I see.
And boxing is not a style that you should use if you're small. Not at all, period, zip. Don't do it. Pretty much you want to swing your sword like you're swinging a whip. I'm going to use this little one so you can see more. So if I just do like this and go out and punch, I mean, that's all it has. But if I go and pop like that with using it like a whip, moving my hand just a little bit past, that's like this, and then it comes out and straightens out. It'll do that all by itself. You don't have to worry about it. It's a whip, whereas the boxing is just a punch.
Okay.
I mean, you can knock somebody around with a punch, but you're not going to get any good shots with it. At least if not, if you're 125 pounds and 5 foot tall.
That pretty much describes me.
Yeah, now here's another little trick. So if you ask somebody, now this may not be true because I'm finding the Australians are a little more reasonable than a lot of people over here. If you ask a male fighter what kind of, how would you make your sword, they'll tell you either one, well, they'll all tell you, well, you should use a short sword because you're a woman and you won't be able to handle a long sword. Notice where I'm going with this? And you should either use a real heavy sword because otherwise nobody will feel your blows. They don't tell you that you won't be able to swing it fast enough to hit anybody. Or they'll say, and you should use a real light sword so you can move it as fast enough to hit somebody, but they don't tell you that nobody will feel it. So you have to get some technique into this and really be able to blast people. What you want is a sword just like this one. This is 36 plus the tip. And I cut my handles sort of triangular so that you probably can't see it from there. The front edge goes right on these knuckles. And so I can hold it. I know exactly where the edge is. Now you want to get a fairly light piece or a tan, like an 1.25 inches. You can get a little denser, that's fine. But then what you do is you get a piece of seat belt. You can usually buy it at a hardware store. It's like 2 inches wide and it's thick, it's heavy. And you put 16 inches of it down from your tip down the front edge of the blade. And then if you feel you can deal with it, you take another piece of it about 6 inches and you put it on the back edge of the blade right under the tip. And what that does is instead of your sword balancing, well, you're gonna have a handle on it here. So instead of your sword balancing here, it'll balance here. And this makes it's sort of like you've heard that old stories about you have a hollow club and you have balls of steel in it, and when you swing it, they all go out to the end. That's what this is.
It's a good tip, thank you.
And if you get it any shorter than, if you really just can't do it with 36, I mean, it's better if you just push through and try to get it to where you can use it. Go down to maybe a 34. If you go any less, you're just giving away too much range. You get a guy that's 6'4", you won't even be able to get close to him. But you will be with a sword like this. If you take this and you do a slide step that gets you like 18 inches, you have a range of anybody. Oh, and this is a nice little thing you should do too. This is a little lanyard. It's just 2 pieces of leather. One's here, comes out to here, has a buckle on it. And the other one, it starts there and comes around and goes through the buckle. Or you can just take just a long strip of leather, about 27 inches. And I use wood screws right here to hold them into the sword, tape over them real good. And then you can put your hands through like this and then twist it once, and now your sword. And what this does is it causes it, when you're pulling your sword, it pulls from the back of your hand, so you don't use your wrist, you're using your whole body, and that's moved by your core. So now here, and when you start working on any of this stuff and you maybe look at those videos and you have any questions or you need some help, get in touch with me, because I do teach online like this.
Wonderful. Thank you for the offer. On that, I better get going. I've got kids to get to bed, and I thank you very much for your time tonight.
Okay. Thanks,
Well,
for
thanks for your
coming,
time.
Marion. Yeah. I think we might even, yeah. I think we might even finish up here unless there's anything you'd like to add.
Oh, I could talk for another 4 or 5 hours, but let's not. That's one of the things I just have. It's really a temptation. When I used to do seminars, you know, I start at the beginning and I go through everything. And I try over the course of 2 6-hour days to go through everything twice or 3 times. And about 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, I look out and everybody's sort of glazed over this.
Yeah, well, so thanks for coming, Paul. And thanks for the talk, and hopefully we'll see you in Lockhart soonish.
Yeah, I think
One day.
a little while anyway, but I'd like to get over there again. Thanks for setting this up, and I'll see you at your normal time, I hope.
Yep. Okay.